My sister told me to die alone. Hours later, my parents begged me for $35,000. I hung up. Can you imagine being told to your face that you should die alone, that you're a pathetic loser? And then, just hours later, receiving a frantic call that the very person who hurled those words needs your money to live, or they might not make it. What the hell would you do? That's exactly where my story begins. It was late on a Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. to be exact, when a text from Meredith lit up my phone. We hadn't spoken in 6 long months, not since she'd stomped into my apartment demanding I co-sign a loan for her husband's failing restaurant. I'd said no. The ensuing explosion was, well, Meredith. She'd called me selfish, slammed the door so hard I thought the frame would crack, and then came the text, "Hope you die alone, you pathetic loser. At least I have a family who loves me. You'll never be anything but a bitter, jealous failure." I read it twice, let the bitter words sink in, then calmly set my phone down, switched off the light, and went to sleep. 3 hours later, at 3:18 a.m., my parents called. I let it ring 4 times. Even half asleep, I knew a call at this hour wasn't good news delivered reasonably. "Your sister's in the hospital," Mom said, her voice shaking with what sounded like rehearsed panic. "She needs surgery immediately. The doctors say it's critical. We need $35,000 by morning or they won't operate." I sat up slowly, running a hand through my hair. A cold dread seeped in, but it wasn't for Meredith. It was for the exhaustion I knew this conversation would bring. "Which hospital?" I asked, my voice flat. "That doesn't matter right now," she snapped, impatience cutting through her panic. "We need you to wire the money. Your father and I don't have that kind of cash, and Meredith's insurance won't cover this procedure. You're the only one who can help." "What happened to her?" I pressed. "An accident. She fell down the stairs at home. Internal bleeding. The doctors say if we don't pay for the surgery tonight, she could die by morning." My eyes flicked to my phone screen, where Meredith's venomous text still glowed in the darkness. The timestamp was barely 4 hours old. "No," I said. Just one word, quiet, but firm. "What?" Mom's voice cracked, genuinely shocked this time. "You can't be serious. This is your sister. Your only sister." "I'm very serious," I replied, the ice in my veins spreading. "I'm going back to sleep now. Good night." I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I silenced it, plugged it in, and pulled the covers back over my shoulders. Sleep came easier than I expected, a deep, defiant peace. Morning arrived with 73 missed calls and 42 text messages. I made coffee first, savoring the ritual, before daring to look. The messages were a whirlwind: Mom's tearful begging, Dad's cold fury, Meredith's husband Troy sending paragraphs about what a monster I was for letting his wife die. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about my character. An uncle I'd met twice at funerals told me I'd burn in hell. I deleted them all without a single response and drove to work. My colleague Patricia noticed something was off during our morning meeting. I'd been staring blankly at the conference room wall for 5 minutes while she discussed a critical account. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Family emergency," I said, a slight tremor in my own voice. "They'll get over it." She didn't press, and I appreciated it more than she knew. Patricia had met my family once, at a company holiday party. Meredith, predictably, got drunk and told everyone I'd always been jealous of her because she was the pretty one, the fun one, the one who actually knew how to live life instead of hiding behind spreadsheets. Patricia had quietly suggested we leave early that night. She knew. Later that afternoon, my office phone rang. It was Gina, reception. "Someone claiming to be your mother is on the line." Out of morbid curiosity, I picked up. "The hospital is threatening to discharge Meredith without the surgery." Mom blurted, no greeting whatsoever. "They're saying she can recover at home with pain medication and monitoring. Your father and I are trying to convince them how serious this is, but they won't listen unless we can guarantee payment." "Sounds like she'll be fine then," I interjected, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. "How can you be so cruel?" she wailed. "This is your sister, suffering in a hospital bed, and you won't even help her. The same sister who texted me last night hoping I die alone?" I shot back. "That sister." Silence. Long, heavy silence stretched between us. Then, she didn't mean that. She was upset. "You know how she gets when she's emotional." "I do know," I said, my voice hardening. "That's exactly why I'm not sending money. We raised you better than this. Your father is so disappointed. He can barely look at photos of you anymore." "Tell Dad I said hello," I replied, then hung up. Before she could call back, I blocked their number from the office line. The evening brought a fresh wave of attacks, this time on social media. Meredith had posted a long, rambling status about her heartless sister who refused to save her life, complete with a photo of herself in a hospital gown, looking pale and tragic. The comment section exploded with strangers calling me every name imaginable. Several even tagged me directly, ensuring I'd see their outrage. I reported a post for harassment, then went to the gym. It felt good to sweat it out. 3 days passed. The calls and messages slowly died down as my family finally realized I wasn't going to respond. Meredith posted an update, saying she was recovering at home, that God had blessed her with survival despite having such a terrible sister, and that she'd never forget who abandoned her in her darkest hour. I, on the other hand, bought new running shoes and increased my morning jog distance. My life was finally my own. The truth started leaking out 2 weeks later, not from them, but through Aunt Rosemary. Mom's younger sister, Rosemary, had always maintained a strained relationship with the rest of the family. She called from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered, thinking it was work. "I need to tell you something about Meredith's hospital visit," Rosemary said without preamble, her voice tight. "Your parents are lying to you. The whole thing was staged." I felt my heart pound against my ribs. I pulled my car over into a grocery store parking lot, my knuckles white on the wheel. "Staged how?" Meredith went to the ER with chest pains. They ran tests, found nothing serious, gave her anxiety medication, and sent her home after 6 hours. The bill was $800. "Your mother decided to turn it into this elaborate scheme to get money out of you because Meredith and Troy are 3 months behind on their mortgage." A wave of something akin to nauseated relief washed over me. "How do you know this?" "Troy got drunk last weekend at a barbecue and started bragging about it. Said they almost got 35 grand out of you, but you were too stubborn to care if your own sister died. He thought it was hilarious. Your mother was furious with him for talking, but several people heard. I figured you deserved to know what they're really like." "Why are you telling me?" I asked, suspicion still lingering. "Because I've watched your mother manipulate people my whole life, and I'm tired of staying quiet. She did the same thing to me 10 years ago. Claimed she needed money for emergency surgery that turned out to be an elective cosmetic procedure. I gave her $12,000 I never got back. You were smart to say no." We talked for another 20 minutes. Rosemary confirmed details I'd suspected but never wanted to acknowledge, how Mom always favored Meredith, how she convinced Dad I was difficult and ungrateful, how Meredith had learned to weaponize their favoritism into a lifetime of getting whatever she wanted, while I was expected to be the responsible one who asked for nothing. I thanked Rosemary for calling and sat in that parking lot for an hour, watching people load groceries into their cars, wondering how many of them had families that would fake medical emergencies for money. The next move came from an unexpected direction. My father showed up at my office building on a Thursday afternoon, waiting in the lobby. Security called up, asking if I wanted him removed. I said no. I needed to face this. He looked older, his hair completely gray since I'd last seen him at Christmas, 18 months ago. He stood when I approached, his expression a mix of anger and exhaustion. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." My voice was steady. "Your mother is devastated. She cries every night because of what you've done to this family." I crossed my arms. "What I've done?" "I didn't fake a medical emergency to extort money from anyone." His face reddened. Meredith was genuinely scared. She thought something was seriously wrong. "Your mother was trying to help her get the best care possible. By lying about needing $35,000 for a surgery that never happened? That's not helping, Dad. That's fraud. Don't talk to me about fraud. You've defrauded this family of basic human decency. Meredith needed support, and you abandoned her." Meredith needed $800 for an ER visit that found nothing wrong. She got anxiety medication and went home. Those are the facts, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. Dad stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You've always been jealous of your sister. Always trying to make her look bad because she has what you don't. A husband, a family, people who actually care about her." Something cold, utterly final, settled in my chest. "Is that what you really think? That I'm jealous? What else would explain this cruelty? Your own sister reaches out for help, and you turn your back. What kind of person does that? The kind who's tired of being treated like an ATM machine by people who've spent my entire life telling me I'm not good enough." I picked up my coffee cup from the lobby table. "You should leave now. I have work to do." "If you walk away right now," he warned, his voice rising, "you're walking away from this family permanently." Your mother, and I won't tolerate this disrespect any longer. I turned, heading for the elevator. You haven't tolerated me for years, Dad. This just makes it official. His voice followed me across the lobby. Don't come crying to us when you end up alone with nobody who cares whether you live or die. I pressed the elevator button, keeping my back to him, until the doors opened. Several people in the lobby were staring. I didn't care. The doors closed on Dad's angry, defeated face, and I rode back up to the 14th floor in silence, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and profound relief. That night, I contacted a lawyer, Derek Walsh. Not because I planned legal action, but for documentation. Derek, specializing in family law, had seen cases like mine. He listened intently, asked about timelines and evidence, then recommended I preserve everything: Meredith's original text, call logs, Rosemary's testimony, the social media posts. You might need this if they escalate, Derek said, his expression grim. Some families don't know when to stop. What would escalation look like? I asked, a chill running down my spine. Filing false police reports. Spreading defamatory statements to damage your professional reputation. Showing up at your workplace repeatedly. Harassment campaigns. I've seen all of it. I paid his retainer, leaving his office with a plan for protection. They got worse. Meredith's husband, Troy, started calling my office directly, bypassing the receptionist by claiming to be a client. The first time, he got through to my desk and spent 15 minutes screaming about how I tried to kill his wife through neglect. I hung up and reported his number. He just called from different phones. The harassment expanded to my professional network. Troy created fake LinkedIn profiles, messaging my colleagues and supervisors, claiming I'd stolen money from my dying sister and suggesting they should reconsider employing someone with such questionable ethics. My boss, Susan, called me into her office after the third message. I know this is garbage, she said, showing me her phone, but I need you to make it stop. It's reflecting on the whole department. I showed her the documentation Derek had compiled, screenshots, call logs, Rosemary's witness statements, even medical records Rosemary had obtained through Meredith's careless social media posts, which directly contradicted the emergency surgery story. Susan reviewed everything carefully. Do you want to press charges? I want them to leave me alone, I said, exhaustion heavy in my voice. If legal action accomplishes that, yes. Let me talk to corporate legal, Susan decided. We might be able to send a cease and desist on behalf of the company since he's targeting you through work channels. The cease and desist letter arrived at Troy and Meredith's house 5 days later, on company letterhead, signed by 3 attorneys, promising swift legal action. Derek sent his own letter the same day, documenting the fraud attempt and threatening civil action for defamation and emotional distress. Silence. Blissful, complete silence followed for almost 3 weeks. I used that time to rebuild. The stress had cost me sleep, affected my concentration, and left me constantly looking over my shoulder. Now, with legal protection and their communications blocked, I could finally breathe. Patricia became an unexpected ally. She invited me to her book club, 6 women who met monthly. I'd never been a joiner, always too busy or too worried about what my family might need next. But now, with that weight lifted, I found myself actually enjoying these evenings. These women had their own complicated family stories. Jennifer disowned by her parents for marrying outside her religion. Alexis hadn't spoken to her brother in a decade after he stole their grandmother's jewelry. Shauna's mother still called her fat every time they spoke. We didn't dwell on dysfunction, but knowing they understood made the occasional mentions easier. When I briefly explained why I cut off contact, nobody gasped or tried to convince me family was everything. Jennifer simply nodded and said, "Good for you." That takes real courage. Work continued improving. The Brennan account expanded, leading to 2 new major clients. I hired 2 junior analysts. One, Marcus, a recent grad, reminded me of my younger self, eager, apologetic, constantly worried about being a burden. One day, he apologized for the 5th time in an hour for asking questions. "Marcus, stop," I said, setting down my pen. "Questions are part of learning. You're not bothering me. This is my job. I just don't want to waste your time," he mumbled. "You're not wasting anything. Where did you learn that asking for help was a waste of someone's time?" He looked uncomfortable. "My parents always said I needed to figure things out myself. That successful people don't need their hands held." I recognized that philosophy. My parents said similar things, usually before praising Meredith for asking them to solve all her problems. The double standard was invisible to them, but glaringly obvious to me. Your parents were wrong, I told Marcus. Successful people ask questions, learn from experts, and build on other people's knowledge. That's how progress happens. So ask me whatever you need, and I'll let you know if I'm actually too busy. He nodded slowly, and over the months, I watched him gain confidence. He stopped apologizing, started contributing ideas, and developed into a genuinely skilled analyst. Watching his transformation felt oddly healing, like I was giving someone else the support and encouragement I'd never received. The healing wasn't always straightforward. Small things would trigger unexpected reactions. A colleague mentioning her sister helped her move into a new apartment, a sharp twist of something I couldn't quite name. A commercial with a mother and daughter laughing. I'd have to leave the room. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Caroline Winters. Not because I thought I'd made the wrong decision, but to process everything healthily. She was in her 50s, kind eyes, no nonsense. You're grieving, she explained. Not for who they actually were, but for who you wish they could have been. That's a legitimate loss. I don't feel sad, I admitted. Mostly I feel relieved. Grief isn't always sadness. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's just emptiness where a relationship should have been. All of those are valid responses to losing family, even when you're the one who made the choice to walk away. We talked about my childhood, the patterns I'd normalized. How Meredith could crash her car 3 times in high school and Dad just bought her a new one, but when I asked for help with college textbooks, Mom said I needed to learn financial responsibility. How holidays always revolved around what Meredith wanted. How I'd learned to make myself small, undemanding, because needing things only led to disappointment. You trained yourself not to have needs, Dr. Winters observed. That's a survival mechanism, but it's also a prison. You're allowed to want things. You're allowed to expect basic respect and consideration from the people in your life. The concept felt foreign, yet intriguing. I'd spent so long being the low-maintenance one. Building a life where I expressed preferences and expectations required rewiring decades of conditioning. I started small, telling Patricia when I didn't want to see a movie she suggested, instead of just going along with it. Letting Marcus know when I needed uninterrupted work time. Ending a 3rd date with someone who'd talked about himself all evening without asking me a single question, instead of giving him another chance. Each small assertion of my needs and boundaries felt terrifying and liberating. The book club met at Jennifer's house for our October gathering. Warm, welcoming, full of life. We were discussing a memoir about family estrangement when Alexis asked me directly how I was handling the aftermath. Honestly, better than I expected, I said. I kept waiting for this crushing guilt or regret, and it just never came. Mostly, I'm just angry it took me so long. That's because you were trained to prioritize their feelings over your own, Shauna said. It takes time to unlearn that programming. Jennifer refilled my wine glass. Have they tried contacting you since the legal letters? Alexis asked. Not a word. I think they finally realized I meant it. Good, Alexis said firmly. Some people only understand boundaries when there are consequences for crossing them. We moved on, but the conversation stayed with me. These women had become something my family never was, a genuine support system. They celebrated my successes without jealousy, offered help without strings, and respected my boundaries without making me feel guilty. This, I realized, was what healthy relationships looked like. Thanksgiving approached. My first holiday completely separate from my family of origin. The prospect should have felt lonely sad. Instead, I found myself planning a Friendsgiving dinner with the book club women. We each brought dishes, ate too much, and spent the evening playing board games, sharing stories that had nothing to do with family obligation or guilt. Patricia pulled me aside while we were cleaning up. You know, you're glowing, right? I don't mean that in a cheesy way. You literally look healthier and happier than I've ever seen you. I feel it, I admitted, a genuine smile on my face. It's like I've been holding my breath for 34 years and finally exhaled. That's beautiful, she said, her eyes warm. I'm proud of you. You know, what you did took real strength. Her words meant more than she probably knew. My parents had never said they were proud of me. Not even when I graduated summa cum laude, or got promoted, or bought my first apartment. Meredith received praise for showing up, for trying, for merely existing. I received expectations, criticism, and the assumption that my accomplishments were just what I was supposed to do. Hearing someone acknowledge my strength felt like being seen for the first time. December brought a complicated test. Rosemary called. Meredith and Troy were definitely heading toward their first divorce. Meredith had apparently discovered Troy was having an affair with a hostess from the failed restaurant, and the fallout was spectacular. She's calling everyone in the family asking for money to hire a better lawyer, Rosemary said. Your father gave her $10,000. She's been posting on social media about betrayal and how family is supposed to support each other in hard times. Let me guess, she wants me to contribute too? I asked, a dry laugh escaping me. Your mother already reached out to several cousins claiming you'd want to help, but she didn't have your current number. I shut that down immediately, but I thought you should know what they're attempting. I thanked Rosemary for the warning. I felt nothing but relief that I'd changed my number and blocked all their access. The old me would have felt guilty, would have wondered if I should help. The new me recognized the manipulation for what it was and went about my day unbothered. Dr. Winters and I discussed it. How do you feel about your sister's divorce? She asked. I feel bad for her kids. They're the innocent victims. But Meredith chose Troy, chose to stay with him through all his failures and schemes. Chose to participate in trying to defraud me. Her consequences aren't my responsibility. That's a healthy perspective. Are you worried she might escalate again? The legal protections are still in place. If she tries anything, Derek will handle it. I'm not going to live my life waiting for the next attack. Winter settled in, bringing shorter days and longer nights. I started evening painting classes, finally pursuing a hobby I discovered I enjoyed, despite being terrible at it. The instructor, Vivian, had a philosophy I appreciated. Art isn't about being good. It's about expressing yourself and enjoying the process. My paintings were objectively bad, colors that didn't quite work, proportions that seemed off. But creating them made me happy. Choosing colors, allowing myself to make something imperfect just for the joy of it. It felt like reclaiming parts of myself I'd suppressed for years. Marcus asked to see my work one day. I showed him a painting of Cooper, my newly adopted shelter dog, sitting in a field. I love this, he said, surprising me. It's got personality. Like, you can tell someone made this because they wanted to, not because they were trying to prove anything. His words captured exactly what I'd been feeling. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy. These paintings existed just because I enjoyed making them. No deeper purpose, no validation seeking, just creation for its own sake. The year ended quietly. I spent New Year's Eve at Jennifer's party, surrounded by the book club women and their partners. At midnight, we toasted to new beginnings, to letting go of what no longer served us. To choosing ourselves, Alexis said, raising her glass. We all drank to that. Then, Mom had a stroke. Aunt Rosemary called, her voice gentle but firm. It's real this time. I'm at the hospital with her. Your father is here. Meredith is flying in tomorrow morning. I thought you should know, but I'll understand if you don't come. How bad? Serious, but stable. She'll need rehabilitation, probably months of it. The doctors say she'll recover most of her function if she does the work. I thanked Rosemary and ended the call. Then I sat on my couch for 2 hours, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what I felt. Anger, yes. Sadness, maybe. But mostly relief that I felt nothing resembling the guilt they probably expected me to feel. I didn't go to the hospital. Meredith sent a text the next day. Her first direct communication since the "Hope you die alone" message. Mom had a stroke and you can't even visit. You really are heartless. Dad was right about you. I blocked her number. 3 weeks later, the bills started arriving at my apartment. Medical invoices addressed to me, despite my name being nowhere on Mom's insurance or treatment paperwork. Someone had given the hospital my information and claimed I'd agreed to be financially responsible. Derek made 3 phone calls and sorted it out within 48 hours. The hospital apologized for the confusion. He also sent another letter to my parents' address, this one outlining potential criminal fraud charges if they continued attempting to financially obligate me without consent. More silence followed. I threw myself into work. The Brennan account expanded into 3 additional projects. Susan promoted me to senior analyst with a substantial raise. I bought a condo in a better neighborhood and adopted Cooper, a 3-year-old mixed breed surrendered by owners who didn't have time. I changed my phone number, giving the new one only to Rosemary. I stopped checking social media entirely, deleting all my accounts, feeling lighter the moment they disappeared. The detox revealed how much mental energy I'd wasted on maintaining appearances and monitoring what my family said about me. Without the constant stream of Meredith's passive-aggressive posts and Mom's pointed shares about ungrateful children, I found myself with hours of free time. I filled those hours deliberately. I started learning piano through online tutorials, something I'd wanted to do since childhood, but my parents said was impractical and expensive. The keyboard wasn't fancy, but sitting down to practice scales felt like reclaiming a piece of childhood wonder I'd abandoned, trying to be the daughter they wanted. Work took an interesting turn when Susan approached me about leading a new initiative. The project meant managing a larger team, interfacing with C-suite executives, and quarterly travel. 2 years ago, I would have hesitated, worried about family obligations. Now, I said yes immediately. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and my own corner office. Marcus, now an invaluable team member, congratulated me with genuine enthusiasm. "You deserve this. You've taught me more about this industry than 4 years of college did." His words reminded me of something Dr. Winters had said: "The people who matter will celebrate your success, not resent it." My family always treated my achievements as expected or threatening. Meredith especially had a talent for diminishing anything good that happened to me, turning my promotions into examples of how I was all work and no life. Being surrounded by colleagues who genuinely supported each other felt revolutionary. The new role brought challenges. One executive, Gerald, had a management style that reminded me uncomfortably of my father. He expected people to read his mind, got frustrated when they asked questions, and took credit for successes while blaming his team for failures. Several team members came to me privately. In the past, I would have stayed silent. But therapy and distance from my family had given me new tools. I documented Gerald's behavior, gathered statements, and presented the information to Susan with specific examples and suggested solutions. Susan took it seriously. Gerald received coaching, and 2 of his direct reports were quietly reassigned. The situation improved. "How did you know he'd actually listen?" Marcus asked. "I didn't know," I said. "But I knew staying silent wasn't going to change anything. Sometimes you have to risk conflict to create something better." That philosophy extended into my personal life. I'd been casually dating, nothing serious, until I met Kevin at a gallery opening Jennifer dragged me to. He was looking at the same abstract piece I'd been studying. "I can't decide if I love this or hate this," he said. "Maybe it's both," I suggested. "Sometimes the most interesting things are complicated." We talked for 2 hours. Kevin was an architect, recently divorced, with a 12-year-old daughter. He'd been in therapy for 3 years, processing the end of his marriage and his complicated family. Our first official date turned into dinner, then walking around downtown until restaurants closed. He told me about his daughter, Lily, and I told him about cutting off my family, the broad strokes. "That must have been hard," Kevin said. "Staying would have been harder," I replied. I finally figured out the difference between hard because it's painful and hard because it's wrong. He understood that distinction in a way most people didn't. We didn't bond over family trauma, exactly, but there was a shared understanding that made conversations easier. Dating Kevin felt different. We took things slowly. He met Cooper on our 5th date, bringing treats. Cooper's approval felt significant. I met Lily 2 months later. She was quiet, observant, clearly sizing me up. I didn't try too hard to win her over, just treated her like a person worthy of respect. "Your dog is cool," she said when Kevin showed her pictures. "Can I meet him sometime?" That simple exchange felt like passing a test. Kevin told me later Lily had asked if I seemed nice, a question loaded with significance. The relationship progressed naturally. Kevin started staying over some weekends. I met his friends, he met mine. We fell into comfortable rhythms. Patricia noticed. "You're in love with him." "Maybe," I admitted. "It's different than I expected. Calmer. Less dramatic." "That's because it's healthy," she said. "Healthy love isn't supposed to be a roller coaster. It's supposed to be stable, supportive, genuine." I thought about Meredith and Troy, their relationship characterized by constant drama and grand gestures. My parents had seemed to consider their explosive fights proof of passion, rather than dysfunction. What Kevin and I had was different. We disagreed, worked through conflicts with communication, and respected each other's boundaries. This was what partnership looked like when both people were whole individuals choosing to share their lives, rather than broken people trying to complete each other. The legal threats must have worked because nobody from my family attempted contact again. Rosemary sent occasional email updates. Mom's recovery was progressing slowly. Dad had retired. Meredith and Troy divorced, then reconciled, then divorced again. Their kids were teenagers now, struggling with the chaos. I felt sympathy for them, understanding what it meant to grow up where love came with conditions. But I couldn't help them. That wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to Cooper, to Kevin, to the team I managed, to the life I built from scratch after walking away from people who wanted to tear me down. 2 years after the fake hospital emergency, I ran into Patricia at a coffee shop. She'd transferred to Boston, but was back visiting. You seem different, she said. Lighter, maybe. I can't quite pin it down. I cut off my family, I said simply. Turns out, they were the weight I'd been carrying. She nodded slowly. I remember your sister from that holiday party. The drunk one. That's the one. She tried to scam me for $35,000 by faking a medical emergency. When that didn't work, they all harassed me for months. Patricia's eyes widened. That's insane. It was predictable, actually. I just finally stopped pretending it wasn't happening. We talked about families, boundaries, and the strange guilt that comes with choosing yourself over people who share your DNA. Patricia admitted she'd gone through something similar with her own father, a rift that never healed, but allowed her to build a life free from manipulation. Do you regret it? I asked. Not for a second. Some people don't deserve access to you just because they're related. That's a hard lesson, but an important one. Walking back to my car later, Cooper trotting beside me, I realized Patricia was right. The guilt had evaporated somewhere along the way, replaced by something more solid and sustainable. Peace. My phone rang that evening, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. This is Meredith. Her voice sounded strained, older somehow. Don't hang up, please. I waited. Mom died yesterday. Heart attack. Dad wanted me to call you. There's going to be a funeral on Saturday. Silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing, unsteady and nervous. I'm sorry for your loss, I said finally. That's it, she demanded, a crack in her voice. That's all you have to say? She was your mother, too. Don't you feel anything? I thought about that. Really considered it. I feel sad that she spent her whole life playing favorites and manipulating people instead of just being honest. I feel sad that she chose to enable your worst behaviors instead of helping you become a better person. Mostly, I feel sad that we never had the relationship I deserve to have with a mother. Meredith's breath hitched. You blame her for everything. You never took responsibility for being a difficult, judgmental person who looked down on everyone. I took responsibility by removing myself from a toxic situation. That's more than you've ever done. The funeral is at Riverside Chapel at 2 o'clock. Dad expects you to be there. I won't be attending. Tell Dad I said he should focus on the family he has left. You're really not coming to your own mother's funeral? I'm really not coming. Goodbye, Meredith. I ended the call and blocked the number. Cooper nudged my hand with his nose, sensing tension. I scratched behind his ears and pulled up a delivery app to order dinner. Saturday arrived clear and sunny. I took Cooper to the lake for a long hike, threw a tennis ball until my arm got tired, and stopped for ice cream on the way home. My phone stayed silent all day. I'd half expected more harassment, more attempts to guilt me. But apparently, they'd finally accepted that I meant what I said. The inheritance drama started 3 weeks later. An attorney representing Dad's estate contacted me. There was a small inheritance from Mom, about $15,000 from a life insurance policy listing both daughters as beneficiaries. Dad was contesting it, claiming I'd abandoned the family and didn't deserve anything. Derek handled it. The policy was legally binding. Dad's feelings about my worthiness were irrelevant. The insurance company cut me a check 8 weeks later. I donated the entire amount to a nonprofit providing legal aid to people dealing with family financial abuse. The tax receipt arrived in January. I filed it and forgot about it. Years continued passing. I got promoted again, this time to director. Kevin and I took things slowly, both wary after being burned. Rosemary remained my only connection. She sent occasional emails, never pushing for reconciliation. Dad remarried. Meredith and Troy divorced, reconciled, then divorced again. Their kids were teenagers now, struggling with the chaos. I felt sympathy for them, understanding what it meant to grow up where manipulation was normal. But I couldn't help them. That wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to Cooper, to Kevin, to the team I managed, to the life I built from scratch after walking away from people who wanted to tear me down. Some nights I still thought about that text message. Hope you die alone, you pathetic loser. And the phone call demanding $35,000 hours later. The sheer audacity still amazed me. The absolute confidence that I would comply, that I could be manipulated through manufactured crisis and guilt. They'd been wrong about me. Dead wrong. I didn't die alone. I lived, surrounded by people who genuinely cared, who showed up without expecting payment, who treated kindness as something freely given, not a transaction. The family I chose was better than the one I'd been born into. That simple truth had taken me 34 years to accept, but once I did, everything else fell into place. Cooper nudged my hand, pulling me back to the present. Kevin was making dinner, humming. Outside, city lights flickered on. My phone sat on the coffee table, silent and peaceful. No demands, no guilt trips, no manufactured emergencies. Just silence. Beautiful, heartfelt silence. I'd chosen myself over people who saw me as a resource. I'd made peace with being called cruel by those who'd shown me cruelty my entire life. I'd walked away from the role they'd assigned me, the responsible one, the backup plan, the person who would always sacrifice herself for a family that never sacrificed anything for her. The guilt they tried to weaponize had turned out to be nothing more than smoke. Insubstantial, easily dispersed once I stopped breathing it in. I scratched Cooper's ears and smiled. Freedom. I'd learned it sometimes required letting people think the worst of you. Required accepting that some relationships couldn't be saved because they'd never been real in the first place. The phone stayed silent. The evening stayed peaceful. My life stayed mine. And somewhere out there, Meredith probably still thought I was pathetic and heartless, dying alone in my bitterness. She couldn't have been more wrong. But I'd stopped caring what she thought a long time ago. Call to action * this story changed everything for me. It was incredibly painful, but it led me to a life I never thought possible. Have any of you ever had to make such a drastic decision with your own family? What was the hardest part? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below.